Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome to episode 5 in our 7-part series called Bulge Off 23, where we're trying to take the top 20 tabletop Battle of the Bulge wargames and narrow them down to one champion. We're down to 4. In this episode, we're going to show the results of the Elite 8 round and take us to our final 4. Let's jump right in and take a look at our Elite 8 matchup results. Game number 1 in the Elite 8 featured Last Blitzkrieg from Multi-Man Publishing from 2016 up against A Time for Trumpets from GMT Games 2020. This was a matchup of the remaining, monster and semi-monster. I guess Last Blitzkrieg, honestly, would have to be considered a monster, right? It's got almost 1,700 counters, and it does have a big campaign game. So let's put it out there for what it is. Last Blitzkrieg and A Time for Trumpets, another monster mash here. The results? A convincing victory for Last Blitzkrieg, which picked up 65% of the vote to A Time for Trumpets 35%. This kind of resonates with a couple of things I'll talk about as we preview our final 4, but a resounding victory for Last Blitzkrieg as it heads into the next round. This match, I confess, did go the way I predicted. After each presentation of the next round, I sit down and I jot down which game I think is going to win the next round. Last Blitzkrieg did go the way I anticipated, although the margin was a little bit surprising. But a lot of people mentioning Last Blitzkrieg from very early on in the tournament as one of their favorite games, perhaps with a chance to go all the way. Elite 8 matchup number 2 featured Youth versus Age. We had the Battle of the Bulge 1981, the oldest game remaining in the tournament, from Avalon Hill up against Ardennes 2, the newest game in the tournament from Multi-Man Publishing 2023. This game continues to surprise me. Ardennes 2 picks up 58% of the vote to Avalon Hill's Battle of the Bulge 1981 version, which garnered 42% of the vote. This one, I didn't see this one coming. I thought Battle of the Bulge 1981 was going to eke out a victory because so many of you have said it's your favorite game. One person commented, I played it 100 times, which is remarkable for one Wargame. But I guess he's had some time since 1981 to do this. So maybe, if it were a 2023 game and you played it 100 times, that's one thing. But yes, nevertheless, a lot of people, I imagine, are very disappointed to see Battle of the Bulge 1981 fall to the wayside. Ardennes 2, however, proving its mettle as it rumbles into the final 4. Elite 8 matchup number 3 featured 1944 Battle of the Bulge from Worthington Publishing, published in 2020, and Enemy Action Ardennes from Compass Games, published in 2015. This one was a bigger victory than I anticipated because I know how popular both of these games are. But Enemy Action Ardennes flexing its muscles, going out to an impressive 64% to 36% victory, rolling comfortably over 1944 Battle of the Bulge, which I know, again, now to be fair, all of these games in the Elite 8 had received numerous comments of praise. People saying, I hope it goes all the way, it's my favorite game. So that wasn't unusual, but I have talked to so many people that love the gameplay with 1944 Battle of the Bulge. I was surprised to see Enemy Action Ardennes put on such a convincing win. Although Enemy Action Ardennes, again, does hold that solo gamer vote. It's the only really dedicated solo mode game in the competition, and it does so many unique things with it. So although in my own secret predictions, I did pick Enemy Actions Ardennes to go on to the Elite, to the Final 4, I didn't predict them by that much of a margin. So Enemy Action Ardennes will represent Compass Games in the Final 4. Our final matchup in the Elite 8 saw Ardennes 44 from GMT Games, published in 2019, up against Bitter Woods Deluxe Edition from Compass Games, published in 2014. Another one I wasn't quite sure, but given Ardennes' impressive performance in the previous round, garnered the most votes of any game in the Sweet 16, Ardennes 44 once again lived up to its impressive performance in the previous round by rolling to a convincing 70% to 30% victory over Bitter Woods. A lot of games in the Elite 8 here making a statement as we head into the Final 4. This one, I did suspect Ardennes 44 was going to pull it out based on the fact that it got the most votes of any game in the previous round. With another thundering performance, Ardennes 44 heads to the Final 4 with a ton of momentum. And with that, we come to our Final 4. We've got 4 games left out of a field of 20. Let's introduce our final 4 candidates and get them ready for the next round. Our enemy action Ardennes from Compass Games. We have Ardennes 44 from GMT Games, Ardennes 2 from Multi-Man Publishing, and the last Blitzkrieg also from Multi-Man Publishing, which has 2 of our final 4 candidates. Now, a couple of reflections before we go on and introduce our final 4 matchups. First up, interestingly, we talked a lot in the earlier part of the tournament about how board game geeks didn't seem to be reflecting how well the games were doing in the tournament. And generally what we saw then was that older games like 81 Battle of the Bulge that had lower board game geek ratings were doing really well in the tournament despite those lower board game geek ratings. However, there's another element of board game geek ratings here that's coming to play, and that's that we had, at the beginning of this tournament, there were 3 games that had board game geek ratings 8 or higher. All 3 of those games are still left in the tournament. They're Ardennes 44, Last Blitzkrieg, and Enemy Action Ardennes. Now, Ardennes 2 now actually has a board game geek rating over 8. However, it's only got 17 ratings, and when I started making this tournament, it didn't have enough ratings. It didn't have enough submitted ratings to get an official rating on Board Game Geek. So you could say, however, that all 4 of our final contestants now have Board Game Geek ratings over 8, albeit that, all Ardennes 2's rating is a very small sample size, right? And so what I think we might be able to draw a little bit of more evidence and conclusions from Board Game Geek ratings is maybe they don't really apply that accurately to older war games. Who knows? Maybe younger people look at the game and don't think it's very good from visual appeal, but people who've played it a lot know that the quality of the game is really, really good. But it does seem fair to say that a high Board Game Geek rating certainly is resonating with the results of this tournament. So as we head into the final 4, Ardennes 44, Enemy Action Ardennes, and the last Blitzkrieg all have solid Board Game Geek ratings above 8, and those were the only 3 games that had Board Game Geek ratings above 8 as the tournament started. What does that mean for our final winner? Who knows? But it's an interesting reflection. The second thing I wanted to talk about was a couple of comments mentioned this in the course of the tournament as well. Is it a popularity contest, right? The bigger publishers are going to have a chance to walk away with it because they produce more games. Absolutely. And I think we had to know that coming in, right? And so, the games that are produced, the more are going to get into people's hands, and people are going to vote for those games that they've played and really, really liked. And that's, to a certain degree, the tournament wasn't necessarily designed to do that way, but it certainly acknowledges that reality, which goes back to the definite idea we talked about on the very start of the tournament. This is for fun. This is just to have a good time, to see what games end up and just talk about and wonder about the different results, because, as I will also go back to in the beginning of the tournament, all 20 of these games are table-worthy games that you can extract a lot of fun and joy out of playing the Battle of the Bulge on a tabletop. But most certainly we are seeing here, as we look at our final 4 results, Multi-Man Publishing, Compass Games, GMT Games. The biggest 3 wargame publishers in the industry have 4 games in the final 4. And so to a certain degree, yes, that I think that's come to bear, and it was expected as well. However, I do go back to that previous point too. Not only do we have popular games in there, all 3 of these games have Board Game Geek ratings. 3 of the 4 finalists have legitimate ratings that are over 8 in their rating system there. So I think we're looking at both popularity and quality for sure. One last observation and comment before we introduce our final 4 matchups. I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who's offered a comment, voted, liked, subscribed, done all those kinds of things as they've watched through these videos. It's been I know a lot of people have mentioned in comments how much fun it's been to watch this play out. It's been just as much fun for me to watch play out as well, because I have no idea which way this is going to go. I look at these and think, wow, I think I've got about half of them, maybe a little bit more right, but so much unpredictability and surprises as we've gone through this. It's been a lot of fun to do. People have mentioned in the comments as well and on the channel update that they would like to see other series similar to this. I have a number of ideas on variations of this type of series and with various types of games by era and all kinds of things. So I do want to stick to the types of videos that have been working for a long time on the channel, but I also want to add this type of series in. So we will see more of these, I think, in the future going forward. And with that, it's time to introduce our final 4 matchups. First up, matchup number 1 is our Multi-Man Publishing Clash. We have Last Blitzkrieg from 2015 from Multi-Man Publishing, of course, and Ardennes 2 from 2023 from Multi-Man Publishing. Now, Last Blitzkrieg has rumbled to victories throughout the tournament here. This is the Battalion Combat Series, 1680 counters in this. I think we have to say it's a monster game of the Battle of the Bulge. But again, one of the things I will go back to as people have talked about monster games being too big, right? I think they're often misrepresented, because one of the things I look at in a monster game is not necessarily that it's too big, is that it's comprehensive. I mean, there's so many scenarios that you can play in this without ever going to the campaign game. So I think a lot of monster games really should be looked at almost as kind of collections of scenarios, de-emphasizing that larger campaign, because there are just hours and hours and hours of gameplay in this one, even if you never get to the campaign for lack of time or things like that too. Of course, again, Last Blitzkrieg has the Battalion Combat Series, Multiman Publishing's extraordinarily popular and well-regarded combat series system that they used to make the Last Blitzkrieg. Up against the newcomer in the field, I did not think this one would still be standing right from the start. I thought this one would get knocked out early. Goes to show you what I know. Ardennes 2 from Multiman Publishing. Not the Battalion Combat Series, the much simpler Standard Combat Series. And this game, of course, takes the original Ardennes 1, as we've mentioned before, updates it with some zone of control bonds and some different barrage rules and things like that. So it's an updated version of the original Ardennes in the Standard Combat Series. Now, again, a very, very popular series, right? And one of the nice things about the Standard Combat Series is that you can learn one game in the series, and you're probably 75% of the way there to learning all the games in the series. And that applies as well to the Battalion Combat Series too, right? There's a symmetry of rules that makes it really easy once you've invested to learn one game to go on, which in many cases may explain the popularity of both systems. So a very intriguing matchup here though, right? We have Ardennes 2, simpler war game, a very beloved Standard Combat Series, up against Last Blitzkrieg, much more complex rule set, a comprehensive game, got a little bit of an element of the monster touch in there. Both games coming from Multiman Publishing. Which one of these two games do you think will go on to the final? The vote is on the community page, and there'll be a link in the first comment and down in the description. I'd love to hear from you. See which one's going to go on to the final. Final four matchup number 2. Another very intriguing matchup. We have Enemy Action Ardennes 2015 from Compass Games up against Ardennes 44 from GMT Games from 2019. Ardennes 44, could it be the favorite? It's gotten the most votes in the Sweet 16 round, and it's gotten the most votes in the Elite 8 round. Based on that, would we call this one the favorite? I don't know. We'll find out. But another game that emphasizes the idea of the popularity of series games, right? This is Mark Simonich's XX series over here. This one, of course, being Ardennes 44, that has a similarity of rules concepts across a broad range of games. And of course, this one is famous for its Zone of Control Bond series. So a very playable, very accessible game. GMT Games, of course, leading publisher in the industry. This is their remaining candidate in the final four. However, up against it is Enemy Action Ardennes from Compass Games, with its amazing solo system, and John Butterfield, of course, who has designed some remarkable games throughout the course of his career. This one very, very much beloved, and of course it is the only game left in the series that has a dedicated solo mode, and that's really kind of, I think, what makes this game famous. Someone asked the comment earlier on in this last series, is this an average two-player game and an extraordinary solo experience? I get a sense from it that it's the solo experience is one of the best in the industry, and that's what drives it. And so there is a discrepancy between the two-player mode, but it's not really because of a lesser opinion of the two-player game, so much as it is that the solo mode is so incredibly outstanding. What a matchup this will be. Ardennes 44 with the most votes in the tournament so far. Enemy Action Ardennes with its remarkable and beloved solo system. Which one of these two games do you think should go on to the final? Drop over to the community page to vote for the winner. And there you have it, our final four matchups. I will say the area around me has gotten sparse of games. I started with a pile of 20 games in all shapes and forms around me, and I've been moving the ones that have gotten knocked out upstairs back to the playing table area. There's only 4 games around me now. Pretty soon we'll be down to 2. Please go vote for which one you think will be there. I'll have it up in a week. Historically, the Battle of the Bulge had 2 weeks left to go. It ended on January 28th, and we are on track to finish then. So take a moment, think about which ones you like better if you've played them and stuff like that, and go vote for which one you think should advance on to the final. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in a week.